Pallet wood is rugged, it's pretty much available everywhere, and best of all, it's free. It's why it's kind of at the center of the DIY universe. Well, a few years ago, I made a series of videos about how to make siding and roofing for building from pallet wood. And I talked about the fastest ways to break a pallet down so that you could get those shingles that you needed. And then I made a video about the process of actually installing them. Well, as time has passed, I have developed some adjustments to those methods that make it a little bit faster, or it makes the final product a little better. And so I thought, let's go ahead and make a video that combines all of that information. So if you've ever wanted to shingle or roof a building and you found out how much it costs, how many thousands of dollars it costs, well, this is a video on how to do it for free. Well, it goes without saying that in order to do any of this, you're going to need pallets. And so, yeah, I'm not going to talk about where to find pallets because everybody has unique circumstances. I did make a video that does give you some ideas on ways in which you can find safe pallets, as well as a little discussion about what to look for in the actual stamps on the pallet. So we're not going to cover that. You can check out that other video here. But now that I have collected all these pallets, I'm going to go ahead and show you the fastest way to break them down into shingles. Before you can break the pallets down, you need to know how long your shingles are, because that will affect how you approach it. So my method, for the most part, is I will take a pallet and I will cut with a circular saw right down the base. And what that does is that frees up this piece of wood right here. Now, as long as my shingle is shorter than this distance, it's not going to be a problem. But suppose you're using shingles that are longer. I wouldn't recommend it because there's more likelihood that they're going to twist and bend. But suppose that happens where the pallet is put together in such a way that this distance is too short on the pallet that you're using. In that instance, I would still cut the sides off here, and then that would just leave this center post attached. And then it's pretty easy to just twist, kind of like, imagine this as a propeller, twist the board off. And then that way, if you need, you can get, maybe it's 3 shingles that you're able to get out of that board section. But however you figure it out, however you figure out how many shingles you're gonna need, it's basic division. Divide how many courses you're gonna need. It's, like I said, somewhere in the ballpark of between 11 and 14 inches. Seems like a pretty good range for me. But you come up with a length that you're happy with. The shorter the board, the more courses and the more shingles you're gonna need. So obviously you need to find kind of a balance. Okay, time to break down some pallets. All right, so after completing that phase of the project, you will have a stack of either long boards or short boards, or like in my situation, a combination of both. And essentially, this is the phase where you create all of the shingles. So I have a 2x4 that's screwed down on the end of my chop saw, set to the right length. So I figured out the right length, and now it's time to just mass produce lots and lots of boards. Now, like I said, this is the aesthetic mode. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna trim the ugly stuff off. So this board has some nails on the end of it. So gonna get rid of that. And then I'm gonna pick the best portion of this shingle. And like I said, hundreds of cuts to go. All right, so the first thing you're gonna need to do is you're gonna need to add a kick on the bottom course before you start it, because you start from the bottom and work your way up. And you're gonna need those bottom shingles to tilt out like the rest of the shingles are going to tilt out. And so what you're going to do is you're going to nail in a strip of wood that is pretty close, if not the exact thickness of that bottom course of shingles. And you're going to do that all the way around the bottom edge of your structure. Okay, so when you get to a corner, you're going to want to make sure that you have a pretty big overlap so that the last shingle in that course on the corner hangs over the edge. And what you're going to do is, especially the first time, you're going to square up a shingle on that opposite corner, just like that. And then you're going to mark that angle. Once you have that angle, you can go over to the chop saw and figure out what it is. Now, it's going to differ depending on the thickness of the shingles that you use, but I have found it ranges between somewhere 3 degrees to 6.5 degrees. And once you know for that thickness of shingle what the angle is, whenever you get to a corner, you're going to mark it off. You're going to set your chop saw to, how did they go? Like that. And then you're going to cut that angle. All right, so you're going to cut that angle off. And then, now that you know the angle, you're going to cut another board and you're going to nip off that same percentage on the other board. And that will be the mate to the corner. Once you have that corner assembled, the other thing I like to do is put about 3 or 4 nails in the edge of this board through that other corner board. You have to be really careful that your angle isn't like this because the nails are going to kick out. And so you want to have that angle kind of almost pointed at the corner of the building. Okay. Once a course is done all the way around, it's time to mark your overlap. In this instance, it's 1 inch for me. And I'm going to mark that on either corner of the course that I'm working on. So in this instance, then I would mark 1 inch here. And then I will take a level and I will find the best, most level line between those 2 marks. Now, alternatively, you could also measure up. So you could mark your point down, you can mark here, and you can mark here, and then you would run a level between those 2 lines, and with a pen or a good pencil, you would mark that line. So either way, whatever you're doing, you're either marking you're setting the top or you're setting the bottom. Either one is fine. You just want to make sure these courses remain level. You don't want to get into a situation where eventually your line starts drifting up or shifting down. And so continually double check that you're level. It's amazing how just a couple shingles can start riding up and you're not paying attention and your course is crooked. So that's a really important thing. Secondarily, make sure your course lines never the sides of your shingles never line up with the sides of a lower course. So that means you might either need to add a wider shingle or a thinner shingle that you ripped on a table saw so that they're always staggered over the previous shingle. You don't want these lines to line up. Okay, so once you come back to the corner, Instead of always going the overlap that way, you want the overlap to kind of weave. And so in this instance, we're now going to use a wider board that overhangs this corner, use another board to set as the line, and you're going to repeat that around the structure. I am a few weeks to a month away from installing the roof on the chicken coop, so I thought I would just give you kind of a high-level overview of doing roofs, because they're quite a bit different than doing walls. Now, of course, you're going to need a self-sealing membrane on the roof. This is opposite of the walls. The walls have a breathable membrane, moisture barrier on the walls, but you don't want that on the roof. You want a self-sealing, so it seals up from the nails going in through the roof. Oh, and you're also going to want to make sure that you have a drip edge all the way around the roof, a metal drip edge. Okay, once you get to the point where you're going to start laying shingles down, the bottom kick needs to be about double the thickness of your shingles, about the equivalent of 2 shingles thickness. And you're going to put that down first. And you're also going to be using furring strips. And so those furring strips keep the shingles lifted up so that air can move behind them. You're also going to want to make sure you have 1.5 inches to 3/4 overhang on the sides and on the bottom, on all sides actually. Okay, so that's the basic idea there. A shingle goes down. There we go. And then the next course on furring strips, like I said, obviously, I'm not measuring this, I'm just eyeballing it as an example. All right, so there's an overview of both walls and roofs. This series of videos that I started several years ago, they get a lot of comments and a lot of questions, and there's a theme in those questions, and so I thought I would talk about some of the most common questions that I get. The first one is, what type of nails should I use? And you might not like the answer that I give you. My answer kind of in life is the nails that you have. In general, I have found that 18 gauge 2-inch nails work great for pretty much everything. There are occasionally exceptions. Maybe I get an exceptionally hard type of wood that the 18 gauge doesn't penetrate on. In that instance, then I'm going to go to a 15 gauge nail. But like I said, you use what you have and experiment. If what you're using doesn't work, well, then you need to change the type of nail. Longer for me on the nails is better. The other question that I get quite a bit is, can you seal the wall, or can you seal the shingles? And the answer is absolutely. I like to use either boiled linseed oil or traditional linseed oil. And a note on that is, make sure you seal really well that cut edge that's exposed. Make sure, I mean, obviously you're going to seal the whole thing, but give a special emphasis to making sure you get good sealing on that cut edge. Another point that I want to make is mixed thickness. Inevitably, if you have a big project, you're going to start discovering that you have shingles that are different thicknesses. Yes, you can use them on that same wall or roof, but you can't use them in the same course. And so what you do is you probably want to separate them by thickness. The thicker ones can be on a course by themselves, and the thinner ones can be on a course by themselves. If you mix them, you'll start noticing that you run into problems as you go up the wall. The shingles just can't really seat down very well. It's also important that you keep track of the width, because really all you need is one shingle that is different from the other shingles in that course. And so if you have, 4-inch shingles, 4-inch wide shingles, and you go all the way along, the next course, as long as the next shingle or the first shingle in the next course is different, maybe it's 2 inches or 6 inches, whatever it is, that will throw the entire course off as far as the sides of the shingles being staggered so that you don't have water able to penetrate through those sides of those shingles. A note about cutting the angle corner piece. I have a lot of experience using a chop saw, probably thousands and thousands of cuts I have done on my chop saw. It can be dangerous cutting the angle across the board on a chop saw. There's a possibility that it would bind and kick, and that could be dangerous. So if you do not have experience, I would recommend you perhaps clamping the board. Be careful cutting those angles. A thought on the nail pattern: the wider the board, the more nails. Generally on average size boards, I do 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, and 1 in the middle. But if the board is wider, I'll do 1 on either side in the middle, just to make sure that that holds the board down. And one final note. Occasionally I get comments on this series of videos from professional roofers and builders that inform me that my free pallet wood shingled roof or siding just isn't as good as its $20,000 or $30,000 cousin. Thanks for sharing that with me. I know. The basic idea for this is to work with what we have, to save money and to make do. Personally, I like the look and I like the durability. But yes, it's not as good as something that costs 20 or 30,000 times free. So thanks. No need to share that insight in the comment section. We're all good. We understand. But I do appreciate all 3 people that made it to the end of this video. This is such a niche topic that very few people, I suspect, are actually going to watch this video all the way through. So thank you for those of you that did. Please comment. Let me know that you're out there. Sometimes I feel like I'm kind of shouting into a black hole, and I'm doing this by myself. So your support is much appreciated. If you would like to support the channel, here's a link. All right. Well, thank you so much, and stay tuned for more videos. And if you liked this video, well, you might like these.